Hello, my name's Lindy Cowling and welcome to my channel. If you want to check out any of the services I offer, my website is www.lindycowling.co.uk. Email is info@lindycowling.co.uk. So the title of today's video is called Polarity Reality, and I was going to come on camera and talk about this a couple of weeks ago, but like everybody else on the planet, or like most of us on the planet, time has just been literally running away from me. Time is just crazy at the moment. Basically, it's not doing what we've ever seen it do before, and there just isn't the amount of time physically there that used to be there. So time is just going so crazily quickly, and I've been involved with other things, so I just haven't had a chance to get on here. So polarity reality. What do I mean by polarity? A simple way of kind of explaining polarity would be the two opposing or two opposite sides of the same coin, really. Two opposite ends of a spectrum or a measurement. So opposite and yet not in conflict, opposite but almost working in tandem with one another, so there wouldn't be one without the other. Let's give you some examples. Positive and negative, the two extremes of it. Positive, negative. Of course, there are many variations, many readings in between that, but let's go for the polarity first. Positive and negative energy. Let's go for light and dark. Of course, it's impossible for us to even envisage one without the other, without it becoming dark at night and the stars coming out, without the sun coming up in the morning and the light, and of course all the variations in between, the sunset, the sunrise, dusk, all, you know, the variations in between. But these are the two ends of it, light and dark, positive and negative, hot and cold. And again, the many variations in between that, obviously slightly warmer, less cold, all the variations in between, but the two polarities. So the two, in a way, I'm not going to say opposing as in battle, but opposite ends, and yet one is kind of vital to the other. Yeah, one is vital for the other, because it's a great way of showing this. And anyone who watches my videos will see that I often refer to movies, because I really like films, and I like film and music actually very much as a way of putting across a point, but also both of those, I mean, sound and music is actually fantastic for opening people up and opening the soul and tapping into the heart. But also I like film. I wrote a film once, actually. That's a very long story. Oh, excuse the pun. It wasn't really a very long story. I meant it would be a long story about a film. Oh dear, I'm laughing at my own jokes now. It's been one of those weeks. Yeah, so I like to get things, because film is I'm very passionate about film. I like those creative ways, like music for me, and like I say, film, of getting across something that moves people, that resonates with people. And so one film I can think of that would really illustrate this, and actually I saw this film the other week. I had seen it before, but I saw it on DVD. I hadn't seen it for ages. I think it's called Unbreakable, with Bruce Willis. It's an old movie, And it actually illustrates polarity perfectly. Polarity as it plays out through human consciousness in the soul. Spoiler alert, it is an old film. For anyone that hasn't seen it, Bruce Willis basically doesn't realise till much later in life that he's effectively like a superhero. He is the embodiment of a consciousness that basically, virtually with no exception apart from water, I won't go into it, he can't be hurt. So he can survive a train crash and be the only one who walks out of it without a scratch. He's like a superhero. He has psychic abilities and senses where he saves people, and he doesn't realise this till much later in life, and when confronted with it he realises he's never had a day's illness in his life or something. The other guy in the movie, I might be wrong on this, I think it might be Samuel Jackson. I'm not 100% sure on that. If it's not Samuel Jackson, forgive me. The other guy in the movie, he, oh, you know, God bless him, he's always ill. He's ill all the time. Terrible things happen to him, and he's got this illness where if he knocks his arm or something, he fractures or he breaks, and he was born like it. He was born like it, and he's had a really painful life, full of suffering. Everything is heaped down on this guy, so much so that he is compelled to go in search of the opposite end of the polarity. He feels that if he has a life so racked full of suffering like this, there must be an opposing or an opposite, something or someone else that's the opposite to him, that never gets anything wrong, that's always okay. Now he takes it to extremes of the polarity, because he actually causes huge accidents to see who comes out of it alive, to effectively find the opposite to him, the one that is linked to him, but the opposite end of the spectrum. And of course that's Bruce Willis, and he does find him, because Bruce Willis is one that survives a train accident that this guy causes. Wrecked the whole film for you now. I'm sure you've seen it because it's a very old movie. Anyway, it illustrates it perfectly, and I don't believe the writer or the person that produced that film actually says that they are part of the same soul or expressions of the same soul that are playing out different ends of the spectrum. But that really came to me when I was watching. I thought, oh, I feel my take on that would be there was actually a link. There's a link between these two, and they play out different expressions of the same spectrum. Again, light, dark, positive, negative, hot, cold, the whole perception, meaning one has to exist with the other. And it's really interesting. It really inspired me. That's why I should have got on camera and talked about it when I watched it, really, rather than, I just haven't had a chance. But it really inspired me, and of course it brings up the whole thing with polarity, the polarity of the soul, you know, and the polarity we experience within us as a soul, but also the polarity often we experience when we are in connection with somebody else that matches our soul frequency in some capacity. And sometimes that plays out in a kind of polarity. That does play out in a kind of polarity where one part of the connection is choosing, you could say choosing, or let's really be a bit, I was going to say controversial, a little bit, no, that's not controversial, but a little bit tantalizing here. Let's throw this in here and say maybe not choosing, maybe the soul designs it that way sometimes. Maybe the soul designs it that way in connections where one part of the connection will experience a different play out of consciousness, a different, let's use the analogy of love. Let's use the analogy of love more than light, and that's another one. We could go love and hate, couldn't we? We could go love and hate, another polarity. Let's use the analogy of love, because for me, the analogy of light in terms of energy. You're not talking about light and dark when the sun comes up or when the sun goes down. I'm talking in terms of energy. One of my videos I brought out recently was about the light program, and I'm very much of the perception now, and I don't talk so much about light. I talk directly about love now and functioning from the heart, because I realise that can't be tampered with. It's a stage of evolution, and tapping into light programs, which the majority of us have been doing up to now, is very much tampered with by ourselves, by programming, by belief systems, by outside bodies, by other people, by all sorts. And so if we go for the analogy of love, there might be one part of your soul that chooses to experience the highest expression of the love that you are, coming from the heart, chooses a perception from the heart. So that is the perceptual set, that is the vibration that they evolve into. And another expression of your soul, consciousness, that within another human vehicle, for example, within another human being, chooses to experience a different polarity, So I was careful with my words there, because you could say, well, you could say lower polarity, but it would be lower in terms of its vibration, because coming from the love that you are and coming from the heart portal is the highest level of vibration that we can attain, that we know of at this moment in time on our planet. So it would be a different expression, perhaps an element of your someone connected with your soul could be, or an actual expression of your soul in another human being can be. And it's interesting what that brings up, because for, gosh, about the last year, when I've been dealing with lots and lots of these soul and spiritual connections, and particularly with people that believe themselves to be in twin flame connections, some of whom definitely are, and some of whom don't seem to be, it's always kind of the same thing, where judgment does come up, and nobody can help that another expression of their soul, i.e. a twin flame, chooses either deliberately through their mind, or it's orchestrated from outside of them, or it was always a decision on the choice of the soul, the unit, to experience life in a different capacity. So not from that capacity of love. That's not always by free will. That is sometimes by free will. Sometimes that's due to dropping back inadvertently into belief systems and programs. Because, as I've said before, 95% of what we do in functioning life is subconsciously programmed. This we know. This is how it is, this is how it's been for a long time, but that is changing significantly. One is only truly out of those programs when one is coming from the heart. As soon as you try to think analytically, the vibration drops, and once you go into thinking, you're in that 95% category of going into the subconscious. The subconscious is where all the programming's taken place, positive or negative. This is also reminds me of, slightly deviating here, when people are in love, in normal connections, in what was called the honeymoon phase, in spiritual connections, which are going to become much more the norm, you know, connecting spiritually with someone, the bubble love phase. When they are connecting at that level, the polarity is not usually obvious at that point, because everything is being run through the heart at that point. So the purity within, if you think of the figure 8, I think there's a figure 8 in front of me going that way. In the middle of it, that connection in the middle of that's the bubble bit, if you like, right in the center of the figure 8, where that love and that purity and the divinity and that awareness of creation and no separation is. And then so you go from the figure 8, and then they go out onto the sides of the figure 8, one that way, 99% of the time, for a period of time, sometimes indefinitely, sometimes temporarily, but almost always happens, almost always, and has been. As at that point that the polarity seems really obvious, which didn't seem obvious before when they were in the middle of the figure 8, because the middle of the figure 8 is the awareness of the divinity and the love and the harmony and peacefulness and bliss. That is the actual truth. When they go out into the polarity bit of it again, which serves a multitude of purposes, like coming into your own completion, coming into your own awareness, huge spiritual growth, all the reasons that we spoke about before, but that's when the polarity seems very, very obvious. That's when it can become like deers locking antlers. That's when it can become like opposing forces. If you think about the magnetic properties of this, when the magnets pull in like that, or they push, they repel, literally repel one another. But then, you can also see this beauty to it, like you can see the polarity of everything, with, like I say, light and dark, hot and cold. There is polarity right away across the world as we experience it, and that polarity extends right to the soul and the spirit that we are. And the point I'm making here is, it seems to me that it is the way it is. It is. There is a kind of beauty to that when you come out of the human expression of the emotional expression and the pain body side of it, and you come into the actual overall picture of it. It's quite extraordinary how, but then, it makes me laugh saying it. I was going to say it's quite extraordinary how we are the mirror, really. The soul is the mirror for what takes place in nature and in the world around us, and the world is the mirror for us, but we are all, this is where the link comes in, we are intrinsically linked with the creation of everything around us, and we respond to what's around us, but what's around us responds to us. And on that note, I will love you and leave you, and if you are experiencing a polarity in a connection, whatever that connection is that you are in, it's hopefully an interesting way of taking a different perception on it. That is not giving carte blanche, thumbs up to appalling behavior by an experience of polarity that you might be doing or you might be experiencing, but it's a different take on it. It's a different take on sometimes why I think we experience on every level, from the soul right the way down to the dramas and things that play out in life, why we experience the extremities that we sometimes do. It's almost as if sometimes there has to be, or it seems that that's what it seems to replicate across the planet here and within. Some people, you know, would call that again the shadow side of us within. It's, you know, and you could say that again. It's that polarity is the experience of all, really. It's there within everything. It's there within us. But it has a purpose, and perhaps if we don't lock into fighting it, opposing it, we realize that light and dark can't exist without one another. Perhaps we wouldn't understand what positivity was without negativity. Certainly without the extremes of heat or the extremes of cold, we wouldn't have an appreciation for the other part. And on that note, hope I wasn't waffling too much there. I will love you and leave you. And until we meet again, thank you. Bye-bye.